Great. All right. Well, firstly, thanks very much to Maureen for inviting me along. And I just want to make it clear that I'm not a current ABC employee. I've worked for the ABC on and off throughout my career, but I'm not a spokesperson for the ABC or anything like that. I do contribute to some programs, but I'm not, I'm not a spokesperson as is. But I am a lifelong lover of the ABC and consumer of the ABC, and I've had a wonderful time working there on and off throughout my career. In 2023, the ABC announced that they were going to transition to being a digital-first organisation. And basically, that's reflecting the changes in media that have come about because of internet and mobile phones and all of these sorts of things. And the ABC really holds on to old methods of broadcasting longer than competitors do for a number of good reasons, which we'll talk about. So viewers and listeners to traditional ABC media, like the so-called linear TV and radio, is in a slow decline. They used to say that the ABC TV audience was on average aging 1 year every year. So basically, you can see where that's sort of going. But despite what you might read in competing media, which constantly are basically running a campaign against the ABC, I think the Murdoch media is running a global campaign against public broadcasting. They're constantly saying, "Oh, the ratings are terrible. It's all bad. It's all bad." Well, there's another side to that story where the ABC is hugely successful. So the objective of this session is really to talk about to outline the options for the different platforms for getting ABC content, talk about the digital platforms. So firstly, what do they mean by digital first? It's a term, it wasn't made up by David Anderson. This is a term that's around the industry globally. It basically, there's a number of things. The content is primarily designed and optimized for digital distribution. So when people are making content, they have in mind that it's going to go on the web, on an app. It might end up in a vertical format on TikTok. There's having that in mind when they're making content. Primarily, content will be delivered in the future, and I guess it's starting to be now, through digital channels rather than being broadcast. Consumer interactions with the audience are becoming digital. So people interact with the ABC maybe through social media or chatting in the Listen app, things like that. And that's the way things like online forums or discussion groups is how the ABC interacts, rather than receiving letters or phone calls to the switchboard and that kind of thing. One of the other big benefits is data analytics, the fact that we know so much more about what people are watching, how much they're watching. In the old days, the only way to find out was those diaries. I don't know if anyone's ever had one, where you fill in the diary and say what you tuned to on the radio or what you watched on TV. And there's a lot of skepticism about whether they're very accurate, because often people do them the day before they have to be returned. So now with things like podcasts and streaming, we know exactly what people are watching and what programs they're subscribed to, which is terrific. Finally, the idea is that we can leverage digital technologies, new things which are emerging all the time, to innovate, to come up with new kinds of content, new kinds of ways of putting together stories for the listeners. So let's have a look at what I want to cover today. I joined the ABC in the 80s, and I've actually got a few photos which I'll show, because it's really changed amazingly just in the time I've been there. There have been changes in the platforms. There's new digital media that's come along. Apps didn't exist, I think, really until about 2007. So I ended up getting a job as an app developer, a job that just didn't exist, earlier on in my lifetime. I returned to the ABC as staff again in 2012 after being away working at other computing places and things like that. But gee, it really changed. So I have a bit of a habit of taking photos of things in the workplace if I'm impressed by them. So when I joined 3LO, they were the presenters. I don't know if you remember them, but at that time, this was before about 1980. The ABC was a much simpler operation. There was what so-called Radio 1, which is really named after the BBC, Radio 1, which was a network of local AM stations. There was Radio 2, which was the national broadcaster. At the time I joined, it was classical music on, this is predating FM. And Clive Stark on the right used to do the breakfast show, and he would play classical records. There was Radio Australia, which was on shortwave, and that served the inland and also the Pacific Islands. And there was Channel 2, the ABC TV channel in each of the major cities. So life was much simpler then. Up on the left, I remember there was Ralph Rickman, who's died, unfortunately. Peter Evans, who died on the job, was that was quite a stir. Barbara Horn, does anyone remember Barbara Horn? Lovely woman. She was I think she was a receptionist or something, and she somehow got on air, and she was great. Terry Lane's still around. Haven't seen it. Was he right? He used to do reviews, like camera reviews and things in the Green Guy. Yeah.
That was the same Terry Lane, wasn't it? I've often wondered.
No, it is. Yeah. He's always interested in technology. Yes. Yeah. Michael Schilberger, who's died, unfortunately. And Mary Adams, who's died. And Alan Stokes, we had lunch with the other day, so still around. Just a couple more stars. That Arthur Burridge used to do a morning breakfast show. I think it was up the eastern seaboard. He was, I don't know if he's still around, lovely man. He used to put on a classical record, and then he'd go up the street to get some fresh coffee. So he'd say, "Oh, if the records get stuck, will you kick it on?" And Edwin Ma on the right, who's back from China now, and that's in that studio you do the news, and then they'd ring a gong, and the country stations would drop off and go to their local news, and he's there ringing the gong with his pen. So the studios have changed. When I started, sorry,
Where's John Fallon?
Where is he?
Yeah.
Not in. Well, he's left. He's still around. I think he's doing an ABC Friends event in Geelong, actually. Yeah, shortly.
Number one.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's annoying at times, but always.
So the studios on the left, that's how it was when I started work there, and they were analog. They were valve-based tape recorders with analog tape, and we used to cut the tape to edit it. On the right, that's how it looks today. So this is one of the old, that's actually the breakfast studio on the right. That's Mark Fennell, one of the new breed of program makers. Mark's, you probably see him all over the place. He's one of these new young people who's come up who can do presentation, editing. He edits audio, video. He's a producer. I mean, it's just amazing to see. So these are the skills that the new generation, I think, is bringing in. And the media world has really changed. So everything's digital. The studios are digital now. It's quite a different sort of ballgame. But the whole media world has changed. This is a diagram I saw Ben Thompson of Stratechery showing. That used to be that media was siloed, that you would go to a channel, or you would get a newspaper and you would get that channel and their view of the world. And it was quite a big deal to actually get up in the early days, get up out of the seat and change the channel. So it was scarce. If you got the newspaper, you would get their front page with their view of what the priorities are. Today, though, the consumer has a lot of power. The consumer can go straight in to get the bit of content. If you Google for something, you might find a story in The Guardian, but you'll go straight to the story, read that, and then you're gone again. So the publications are no longer in control of what the audience gets. People just get bits and pieces of it. And so the publishers have lost control. And I think we're still in this terrible time where we don't know how we're going to pay for journalism. It's really a problem for everyone. There are more platforms than we used to have. Today, the ABC has 11 digital radio channels, DAB, digital audio broadcasting channels, in the largest cities. It still hasn't rolled out. I don't think it's in Ballarat. Is DAB in Ballarat? Yeah. No. Yeah. So that's a problem. It's a short range. It's on 76 megahertz or something. It's like FM. It's only short range. So it's slowly rolling out. There's also radio on the digital TV channels. I'll talk about that. There are streaming, there's catch-up services, a lot of active websites for all the programs. So the digital output of the ABC is actually impressive. And as I said earlier, the thing about the ABC is it can't just throw away old technology. So they've still got the original big power AM stations in each capital, and they've got all of these new things as well. So it's really tough. And I think that
Are we going to get the digital here?
eventually that's the plan, is to roll it out. Yeah, I don't.
After I've gone.
After you're gone, you've got to hold on until you get it. So before we turn to the purely digital options, I'll just talk about how you can find out what's on. There's a page, it's reception.abc.net.au, and it's got how to tune in. So you put in Ballarat and it will give you all of the stations that you should be able to hear. It's got all the radio stations, and it's also got the television stations there as well. And I don't know if you saw that the ABC, you know how there's been ABC Plus and ABC Me, they're going away and they're going to be replaced by ABC Family and ABC Entertain.
This is the latest ad, isn't it?
Yeah, so I'm not exactly sure what that means, but all of these channels, I mean, it's a bit strange. I kind of see the TV channels as a taster for what you can get in iview or what you can get in Listen. And same broadcast is kind of, you tune in, you hear something interesting, and we were just talking earlier about how you can, then go and find it in the ABC Listen app, because you might hear just half the program or something. So I kind of feel like broadcast is a bit of a promo for the digital material. All the broadcast channels are also available as live streams. And there's 53 local stations. They're broken down by state and territory. There is a big list. If you go through the website, you can find all these live streams, or they're embedded into iview and Listen and other radio listening apps as well. There's a huge number of them. In the first radio survey of 2024, the ABC ratings of the traditional linear broadcast stations was down. It's going down. And you'll see that the Australian and Sky News constantly run that thing. Oh, the ratings are dying and everything. But the fact of the matter is that the ABC is the #1 streamed network. The ABC gets huge numbers of people listening to the live streams. They had the highest ever recorded audience share of 28.4%. You never read that. Triple J also experiencing growth, and they have a reach of a combined 12% across metro and regional markets. And largely that's because their Hottest 100 program is hugely successful. So that sort of fits into the first ratings. Radio is also available on the digital TV channels. Yeah.
Peter, what did they mean when the ratings are down with the ABC?
Well, the surveys of people, who do the books or they think they have a box that can listen into what you're listening to. So people listening to traditional like AM radio and things like that are declining.
Oh.
And so, yeah, that's sort of in my view, made to be a story about the ABC failing in some way.
Yeah.
But if you look at the other side, on the digital side, which we're discussing today, it's actually doing really well and is hitting above its weight.
Well,
So,
are they going to continue with AM?
I think there's a number, it is controversial, and AM is being turned off in some places around the world. I think AM is very important for emergency broadcasting because a big AM station like 3LO covers most of Victoria really well. And if everything else has gone off, if the internet has gone off because cellular's gone down, you can still get AM. I'll talk a bit more about emergency broadcasting, but yeah, I think, and this is one of the costs of the ABC. They can't just turn off these things because there's a bunch of people. I think it's a pity they turned off shortwave also.
That's what the ABC did today, like for everybody.
Yeah.
Not just for.
And it also is important in emergencies. It has an important role to play there. Yep.
Can I ask you those numbers, channel 25, 20, are they for Ballarat or are they Melbourne?
I think they're everywhere.
That's right.
Yeah.
25
Is there any survey done now, the number of houses that don't have radio, the old?
Oh, gee, I don't know. Yeah, I think it is. Yeah.
Because we don't have a radio.
Don't you?
Radio. No.
Yeah, there is a.
Radio in the garden.
Sorry, folks.
Yeah, sorry.
I've got enough radios for all of us.
And the old bulbs in them.
Yeah, some, yeah. So they're the linear, the old options, but there are some new, there's a breakout hit, and that of course is podcasts. So podcasts are a recording of a radio program, a digital recording that you can play back at your leisure. So you can subscribe to them, you get new episodes. They use a thing called RSS, which is really simple syndication. There are many podcast apps. I like Overcast on iOS, but there's Pocket Casts on Android. Apple has their own podcast app, and that's a great one. And you can get so you can get the ABC podcast, just ABC, in the ABC Listen app, but there are many other podcast clients, and you can get a world of apps. I've been listening to CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, I guess it is. They're kind of like the ABC, a bit like Radio National, and they've got some terrific shows there as well. In Australia, the number one podcast by monthly listeners is Hamish and Andy, a commercial podcast. But the number one podcast by total downloads is Conversations, which is a great show. I just looked at the podcast ratings, which is this thing on the right-hand side, podcast ranker. And 31 out of the top 200 podcasts are from the ABC, more than any other publisher. So the ABC is doing fabulously well in podcasts. The ABC debuted a new podcast called ABC News Top Stories, which debuted at number 3. Went straight to number 3. And this is a short form designed for digital news update. And it just popped in there. It was at first ratings, 669,000 listeners in April. So it's just a summary. It was created specifically for a digital audience. As I said, I think the ABC Listen app is a great way to get ABC content, but there is a lot of other great podcast material, and you can get the ABC podcasts in the other apps as well. Much of the ABC content is also on websites. And, you know, you might think that the ABC website is all about news, but in fact, ABC News is a sub-site. It's actually /news. And there's many others, local, listen, iview is also there. There's emergency, EPG, electronic program guide for TV, ABC Kids. So there's tons of it in that tree. They tend to put a bit of news up the top, but it's easy to be misled and think this is the ABC News site. It's actually a whole tree of content there. Websites are great because they work everywhere. You can use them on a Chromebook, you can use them on a tablet, whatever. But I think that the most engaging way for the audience to get content is through apps. The rise of apps, particularly on phones, apps are sticky. You know, they're with you, they're in your pocket. They have advanced features like watch lists or, you know, subscribe or favorite, things like that. They can also send you push notifications that alert you. So they're kind of less passive than websites. Our websites totally important and will always be there, but I think apps are kind of the future. So I'm going to just do a bit of a walkthrough of some of the apps. We'll cover, these are just a few. The ABC's actually got quite a few apps. These are the top ones, I think, and I'm going to look at iview News and Listen. I'll just touch on the others briefly. But there's a few core concepts in all of the ABC apps. Each of them has what internally we used to call hero content, that big carousel at the top with the main features. These are all chosen by editorial staff who are thinking, what should we be showing people at the moment? Then there'll be, it remembers what you've watched, and I'll talk a bit about your ABC account and how that ties it together. You can have a watch list or favorite programs, so things that you've said, yes, I want to be notified of that, there'll be a list of those. And then there's all sorts of carousels. They might be, I noticed in iview, it's got things like comedy or mystery or murder or whatever, and they'll change from time to time as editorial staff make different selections for you. Some programs can be downloaded on ABC Listen. You can say, I want to download, to be that cloud icon with a down arrow. So you can, if you want to go offline, maybe you're catching the train and the internet's not good, or you're catching a plane or something, you can download some. Not all content, particularly video, that have a license to let you download within the app. But the thing that ties it all together is your ABC account. And you can use your own email, or if you have Google or Apple email, you can use those accounts to log you in. They do ask for a bit of information, things like your name, your year of birth, gender, and these are used in a couple of things. They're used for the recommendation algorithm. So increasingly, they're starting to use that. They know if they know your age and where you live, then they can also recommend programs that might be more valid to you. When I was working in digital network, we didn't have any of this sort of stuff. There was no logging in or anything. I was working on iview, and Michelle Guthrie came from Google to the ABC, and she came to have a talk to us, and she said, oh, I grabbed iview on the weekend, and I, it had a show up on the top, the hero show, and I watched the show, and then I opened up iview on Sunday, and it suggested the same show. And she said, I don't know what's going on. So we started work on fixing that, which means remembering who you are and remembering what you've already watched as a way of not promoting the same thing again and again, but also recommending things. So let's have a look at some apps.
So, Peter, will we be able to access this event this afternoon in time?
I don't know. They are recording it.
Might save us taking notes if we can.
Oh, right.
Yes.
Alright, someone sent me a chat. Now they're saying hi from Phil in Footscray. Hi, Phil. I could certainly provide the slides for you afterwards. Yeah, sure. So let's have a look at the ABC News app. We used to call it the flagship app. It was kind of the ABC app, and although it's available on the phone, most people use it on the phone. I'm going to just show it for the screen format on a tablet. So if we launch the app, you'll see the little person icon on the top right. That's where you access your account. And if you tap that, you get the user settings in the app. And you can manage your account, which takes you back to that website and actually embeds the website in it. So all of the apps share the ABC account and the settings that are inside there. There we go. So you don't have to give up, give a lot of information, and they've got information about how they use it there. But you can make up a name if you want to. You've got to have an email address though. You can set your location for things like weather. You can choose whether you want your top stories to be national or local. You can save stories and go back and view them. I don't have any in there at the moment. You can choose to watch video in only on Wi-Fi and not on cellular if you're worried about blowing out your budget, that sort of thing. And there's also something which I think is a bit annoying. That's the weather. Is video autoplay. I really don't like this trend in apps that just start playing video all the time. So you can turn that off, which I think is really great. Okay, well let's have a look at a story. So you scroll down to have a look at the story. Up in the top right, there's a little bookmark, which I just tapped on there, and that saves it so you can go back and read the story later if you want to. And you just tap it again to remove it from saved stories. Let's go down and have another look at another story. And if you want to send someone a story, there's a sharing feature. It's a little icon down the bottom. It looks like a box with an arrow, and that gives you sharing. Now, this is different on different platforms. It's different on Android to iOS, but you can send someone the story. It basically sends the story URL, so you can send it in messages or in an email if you want to, or you can just copy the URL. Now, if we start scrolling down, there's a ton of content in the ABC News app. I mean, it's a bit overwhelming, really. There's video you can see there, 4 stories. Then there's these carousels, these horizontal carousels. That's local news. There's even audio in there. Tons and tons of stuff. And what's that? Lifestyle. And what's that? Popular. More video. Heaps of stuff. Almost a bit overwhelming. Now, down the bottom, there's a thing, there's just in. See that second one with the clock? So this is just stories in reverse chronological order coming on. If you want to see something that's breaking. Then there's my topics, the next one along, and these are topics that you've favorited the topics. So my topics is kind of like a newspaper made just for you with the things you're interested in. So I'm not interested in sport, and I still get sport. I don't know. I think that the sport deep state wants to push it. So this one, the My Topics, is really like your own personalised newspaper, if you like. Well, that's the idea of it. The final button on the bottom bar is search, and the search or browse, they call it there. It's search, but it's quite a powerful search feature in each of the apps. And here you can add my topics. You can add or remove them. Maybe I did have sport on. No, I don't think I do. There's also live streams in there, and More ABC talks about the other apps that you might want to install on your device. So that's the news app. There's a ton of material in the news app. It's almost a bit overwhelming. Probably the most prominent app is iview, and iview is available on the web, as I mentioned, at iview.abc.net.au, but it's also in iOS, Android. It's also built into a lot of smart TVs and other set-top boxes. Did anyone buy the Hubble box that came out recently? No? I see so many ads for it. I don't know.
I think it's run by.
It is, yes, that's right. I suspect that. Yeah, I think you might be right. People are saying it's a Foxtel thing. Australia, iview is only available in Australia, so it's geo-blocked to Australia, mainly for licensing of program reasons. There is an overseas version called ABC Australia iview that's targeted at expats and people who are trying to learn English, perhaps, things like that. And it has a limited range. So if we launch iview, this is the green one on the left. Up the top left, there's a thing called the hamburger menu, and that slides out to give you this second menu of, well, firstly, you'll see channels as they are, and as you know, they're going to some of them are going to change next month. There's also categories. There's a whole ton of program categories. That's a good way of finding what you're interested in. This is A to Z, programs A to Z, which is a huge list. And if you want to go to a program, there's a trick. If you drag your finger down the right-hand edge where the letters are, you can go through the alphabet quite quickly. Otherwise, you're scrolling for forever to get through it. There's also programs with audio descriptions. That's where if you're perhaps blind, they can describe what's on the screen. They're really great fun to listen to. It's a real skill making audio described program, so people do that. And there's also closed captions, which a lot of people use closed captions because it's often hard to hear the dialogue, so you can do it. So your ABC iView, one of the other things in the left-hand side there, has your watch list and your viewing history. So it remembers what you've watched so far. Support basically takes you to the website for help. Maybe there's some sort of problem. Sometimes there are outages. And the settings there that has things like whether you want audio descriptions or whether you want captions on by default. And you can also turn off autoplay, which is stops that annoying thing.
So subtitles come up automatically?
You can turn it on so that they do the captions, or there's a little icon in the top right with captions that will turn that on. Yeah.
Is there a limit to what you can put on favourites?
A limit? Is there a limit to how many favourites? I think you should find out. I don't know. Okay, so if you hit the X, we get back, and up at the top right on iView is that account button. So you can have multiple accounts. You can switch between, two different people. It's the same as it takes you into Manage. It takes you into the same thing as the news app. The search icon, again, search is more than just search. It's quite a powerful thing. And again, there are options for saying, I want to just find programs with captions. I think everything has captions these days, and audio description. So there's a ton of stuff in search. Okay, there's the options. You can filter the list by, does it have audio description, and so on. Okay, so just looking through the main part of the app, you've got the hero carousel at the top. And I don't know that they are targeted at the moment. I think that it's the other stuff, the recommendation stuff is the one that's targeted. There's good old Vera. As we scroll down, you've got continue watching. So it remembers things that we've started watching that are still in there. Programs don't stay forever. Then there's your watch list, programs that you've added to your watch list, and you get the next episode of them in there. There's the live channels, and they do auto play a bit. I've turned that off in here. As you see, I took these photos a few days ago when the budget had just come out. Then we've got recommendations for you, and the recommendations, there's people working on the recommendation system. It's quite an interesting technical mathematical problem is how to recommend. And I know some of the people working on that are very clever. But yeah, it's interesting. Most watched. So these extra carousels, you know, things like popular drama, these carousels change. They make up different things according to what they want to promote at different times. So there's things like, you know, comedies or news or latest stories, movies. There's really a ton of content. I mean, it's almost overwhelming what's in there. And I tend to search for things. Now, down the bottom, get to it. The ones that are worth looking at are get to it. There's recently added programs. There we go. So things that have just been popped in recently. I find that a good way. And then last chance programs in iView are only there for about a month or so. It depends on the licensing, particularly ones they bought in. They get a license to broadcast the program and stream it for a month. So if you want to watch something, it's worth just keeping an eye on that. And last chance just gives you a day or two to get on it.
It comes up in your watch list as well. When you scroll.
Oh, does it? Yeah.
It'll tell you the episode.
Right. Things can be them. Yeah. Yep. Okay. So if we go in to watch a bit of Vera, firstly, you get a pre-roll ad often, and unfortunately, I don't know of any way to skim through that. I've worked on this software, and I wanted to make it so you could skip it, and they said no. That I guess the marketing folks want to force people to watch it. Up in the top right, there are buttons for casting, as it's called, or screen sharing. So if you've got maybe an Apple TV or a smart TV with Chromecast built into it, you can load the program up on your phone or tablet and then send it to your TV, browse for it. You have to grant, it'll ask you, you've got to give network access. So that's quite a good way. And what actually happens is the program gets handed off to the TV and streamed directly on the TV rather than having to go through your... Yeah. Right. It's a good way to watch it on the big screen if you want to, yeah, or if someone comes in. Okay, so the final app I want to look at is ABC Listen. Now, most people, I think, use Listen on a phone in that vertical format. I'm going to show it on a tablet. It's pretty much the same. Things have moved around a little bit, but it's the same app. It's just laid out to make better use of it. The tab icons across the bottom there, the home, favorites, and search, on the tablet, they're up on the left, but they're the same thing. Okay, so when it pops up, you see those tab icons there on the left-hand side. And it begins with programs that you favorited, so they come up the top. Like iView, there's just a ton of content in there. There's also iView, there are editorially chosen carousels of things that they want to promote to people on different topics. There's also podcasts in there. And there's also audiobooks. And there's about 30 audiobooks, I think, in there at the moment. Not a huge library of audiobooks. actually, we're going to have someone from the library who's going to drop in afterwards and talk to us about digital things from the library too. Okay, in the main part of the app, you've got the station buttons across the top. So if you wanted to listen to 3LO, for example, there's a button for that, or Triple J, or whatever it is. And that basically shows you programs in that station. As I said, this idea of stations is a concept that's gradually diminishing over time.
So I just hope that children are able to not
just
only
played a bit
discover
there.
more about.
Yeah, the app will pop up from time to time asking you for a rating. Always a nice thing to do for the developers. Down the bottom, there's a sleep timer. And if you, like me, listen in an earphone and go to sleep, it's nice to have it turn off after an hour or something if we've gone to sleep. That's a great feature. There's episodes of things you've favorited, programs you've started, and there's also recommendations in there.
Are the recommendations based on your previous experience?
I'm not exactly sure how they're doing it now. I was there 5 years ago, and it's a very interesting subject, how to recommend. One of the ways they do it is, yeah, they look at what you like and show you more of that. But the other way that they do it is they look at what other people who liked the program that you listen to, what are the programs they like? So it's kind of a social thing. It's a very interesting subject, how to do recommendations. And I'm not sure how they're doing it today, but yeah, it's interesting. If we click on an episode, some of them have a download. See the little cloud with the arrow on it? So you can download some programs and have them in your device.
Where's the cloud?
In the middle of the one.
Oh, it's just in the middle there. Sorry. Yeah.
So there's a
Oh,
play.
yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. It's not always there. It's there for some things, not for others. And it's even there for some video. You can mark things as played, and of course you can share them. And that's AirPlay, which can send it. If you've got things like a Google Home, you can send things to have it play on the Google Home and things like that. So I often listen on my phone when I'm walking around. Then when I'm in the kitchen, I can send it to a device and do that kind of thing. You can also send to Chromecast.
Can you send it to Alexa?
I'm not sure. That's an interesting thought. I've never had an Alexa device. I don't know. Yeah, it's quite possible. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's certainly Chromecast and AirPlay.
Yeah.
I know are there, but I don't know about Alexa. Maybe. Yeah. Interesting. Okay, so we've got, if we tap on favorites, which is on the bottom on phones, it's that middle icon there, you get your favorites. Search, as I said, search is much more than just search. It's quite a powerful browser of content. And let's have a look for Philip Clark. He's got a few shows. I like. And they have lots of tons of programs. Actually, the programs go back years. If you search for me, you'll find me going back 10 years or something. It's crazy. Okay, the top left, the little person icon right up in the top left, unfortunately it's in different places in different apps. I don't know why they swap them around, but a little bit of inconsistency. Once again, it's got your settings, it's got links to ABC ID, and it's got a place to favorite stations and programs. There's lots of options about whether you want listen to play in the background, because you can start it playing and you can go and run another app, and it will either, depending on what the option is, it will either stop playing when it goes into the background, or it can keep playing. And you can also set it to automatically play the next episode in a series or not, depending on what you want to do. There are, as I said, some audiobooks available. I think I counted about 30 in there. So not a huge collection, but there are some. You might be better off to get a library app, which has more of them in there. And you can find them through search. Okay, so that's the audiobooks that I saw in there just yesterday. You can get the full list through search. So that's the three main apps that I wanted to just walk through. That was News, iView, and the Listen app. I regard them as the big content apps. But there are actually an amazing number of apps out there. There's some, obviously the children's apps, and the Me is for teenagers. And there's a bunch of other specialist apps, some history ones, Gallipoli, World War One. I think they're mostly on iOS rather than Android. Some are on both. So they're still there. I worked on the Veggie Guide years ago, and I see it's still there. I don't know how well it runs these days because it was designed for very small screens. So look, the big challenge with all this huge amount of content is to find out what's on, to keep up to date. So I think the way to do that is the email newsletters. And there's quite a few of the email newsletters available. They're a great way you get it into your inbox. They're simple, they're well written, they don't sort of muck you around, and they just draw your attention to what's on. There's a heap of them. Some of them are daily, like the news ones in morning and night. Some are weekly. Some are just according to when there's topics like science and health and so on. But yeah, I think the subscribing to the email newsletters is a great way to keep up to date with the new stuff there. I'll just show you, that's the Radio National one that comes in. It's quite easy to read and clean and straightforward, and just getting it in my morning email box means I can just glance through it and make a note of things. They're well curated. Next way of finding out what's on is the ABC is actually on a lot of social media. There is I don't know what there's a page in the on the website which has a list of all of the ABC programs and what social media they have accounts on. It's some funny URL, so you have to Google for it. If you Google ABC on social media, you'll find the page. But they're on the big ones, Facebook, Instagram, and Threads, which are all Meta properties. A lot of activity there. There's also YouTube channels. There's X, formerly known as Twitter. They're even on LinkedIn, and the ABC has a presence on TikTok, would you believe? So there's news stories, short news stories there. There's a new one called Mastodon, which is a bit like Twitter, which I quite like. And I don't think the ABC's on there, but there's a thing called the unofficial ABC news bot, which is on Mastodon, and they just basically, anytime there's a news story published, they post it on Mastodon. So there is a directory. It's some crazy URL, but it's end up with media directory, and it's got for each program what accounts they have.
So what would you access what we've been talking about via Facebook or any of the other ones?
Well, I guess the thing about social media is it's very good at drawing your attention to things that it knows you're interested in. So in your Facebook feed, I'm sure you're aware, is not chronological. It doesn't show everything. What it does is it picks things. So if you pay attention to ABC programs and you're on Facebook, it will put them into your timeline. So I think that's their big skill, is the fact that they know what you pay attention to and they show you things that you pay attention to. So it's a bit smarter, I guess, than just, say, getting the newsletter. Anyway, they're very good at that, but I don't know. I'm very skeptical of Facebook personally. I try to minimize using it. I think it's addictive. You find yourself doom scrolling through it all. Anyway, the ABC is there, which is great. Next up, I'd just like to touch on the ABC in emergencies. I think there's an important role for the ABC in emergencies. It does get specific funding for emergency coverage. As we were talking earlier, things like extreme weather and fires can lead to power outages. The power only has to be off for 24 hours and the mobile network starts to go down, and internet goes off. So if you lose your mobile phone, you lose the internet, how are you going to know what's happening? Exactly. Big AM radio is a fantastic way of covering the whole state, and a battery operated older style AM radio, the batteries last an awfully long time. You can buy radios with a crank that you can charge them up. So if you've been without power for a while, there is this ABC / emergency where you can do a search and find alerts in your area. When something's on, there's an emergency group in the ABC that comes together that actually covers it. And what they'll do, and I'm sure we saw it during the last bushfires, is that the local AM station will cut across to be an emergency broadcaster. And there's even, I can't remember, I've seen them around. You drive around, you'll see in an emergency tune to 774, 621, whatever. So it is / emergency.
up with the big emergency?
Sorry?
Does that link up with the big emergency?
No, I don't know that it does.
That on my phone. and I-
Yeah, no, Vic Emergencies is great. Yeah, yeah,
The radius, but
yeah.
I was just, but you know. Sort of,
I think this is a
this is
more
a
state.
standalone.
Yeah, it's not, I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
So
Yeah.
big emergency isn't always what it takes sometimes to download stuff.
Right.
Or upload it, whatever.
And-
Whereas on the radio, you often get people ringing in going.
Yes.
I'm in such and such and this is what's.
That's right.
happening."
No, it's good.
So,
So will it show us the emergency that was announced today just before lunchtime, that between Beaufort and Ararat, there's been a huge diversion of traffic? Would that be, is that?
I don't know that. I'm not sure that they cover traffic, but yeah, no, that's,
It's certainly an emergency because.
Yeah.
You know, the being.
right. No, I don't know.
how are we accessing this? Is this an app?
No, this is the website. So it's abc.net.au/emergency. There's actually a button in the top tab bar for emergency. Yeah.
Did you say that the ABC is funded?
I believe so. I believe there's some government funding specifically for emergency coverage. Yeah.
Was there not a cost blowout during those fires?
That's right. And that, I know that's caused a problem for the ABC was the cost of covering some of the bushfires. Yeah, yeah, that's true. I just want to sort of round off with some frequently asked questions. A big one people ask, when we rolled out login for iView, there was quite a big backlash against it. People didn't want to log in. And because the fact of the matter is every other app you do need to log in, it's always been that way. But with iView, we didn't ask you to log in initially. So when they introduced it, a lot of people were upset about that. But it's important, I think, that people, it's not a big deal to log in. Once you log in, it means that the ABC can track what you're watching. They can recommend things, all of those good reasons. Once it's done, it's not a big deal. It's also used, the data from the logging in is also used for audience research. So they understand a bit more about the audience, which is important because it knows your year of birth and things like that. Second one is people ask, why do things disappear from iView? Well, it's because of the way they're licensed. We get a license to play the program on broadcast and then a certain amount of streaming, and that's the end of that. So they have to take them off, unfortunately. Reporting problems. You will get bugs from time to time in the apps or something's not working. As an app developer, I would plead with you, don't go and give the app a 1-star review saying Vera doesn't play or something or other. It's so easy to do that. You can go and say, I'll give it a bad review. And you find people who love the app, but they give it 1 star because something's not working. And they feel that will get the attention of the people working on the app. Well, it certainly does get their attention, but what it does is it downgrades the app in the rankings. It means it's not recommended to other users because its ranking has gone down. I think iView's ranking is sort of 4.5 stars or something. It's pretty good. But anyway, I'll just give that message. If you've got a problem, there's other ways. You can go to help.abc.net.au, which has got troubleshooting help. There's also a contact us link in the app and on the website. And there's a chat that you can chat to get help. There's also contact available on social media, so you can put a comment up on the accounts on Facebook and things like that.
Sorry, what was that help?
It's help.abc.net.au. But inside the apps, there's always contact us, and that's a good way to contact and give some feedback. Data. I think it's less of a problem now, but it used to be that people were worried about running out of mobile data. I find now that I don't know how much I've got, but I don't run out. But audio doesn't use much. Audio is about 40 megabytes per hour. Video is about 700 megabytes per hour. If it's high definition, it can be even more, 2 gigabytes per hour. There are some settings where you can adjust the quality. So you can say, I want maximum quality or not. If you're a bit worried about going over, and you can turn that down. Are there any other questions? And I'll move on just to conclusions. Sort of been going as we went. Okay, well, to finish up, like all media, the ABC is affected by this huge generational change in digitisation. So we've gone from this scarcity where we had a couple of channels into this incredible plenty of content, and the challenge is really finding things that are on. The ABC does hold on to platforms longer than competitors, and that is a cost to the ABC. I think that's something that you have to face. I recommend using the mailing list as a way of keeping up to date, or perhaps social media if you're active on there. Someone's asked a question in the chat. We're recording it. Okay. Oh, they're going to post the talk on YouTube. So that's it. Thank you for that. Some people.
Part of the reason why they need to keep up the old stuff is that our internet over parts of Australia is just great.
Yeah, that's true. I'm having trouble with my internet at home at the moment. Yeah, that's right. What about just using the ABC? I don't know if you saw, there was a great story in The Age the other day where Ayn Ryan talked about how much she was spending on all the different streaming platforms. It's become this. There's so many. You know, you've got Netflix and Binge and Kao and Amazon and all of these different ones, and they all want their own subscription. And you want to get one program, you've got to subscribe, and then you've got to cancel the subscription. So she tried just getting by on the iView, and she gives it a pretty good review. She said, "Yeah, there was enough stuff there. It was cheap." She recommended. That's right. Yeah, there's quite a lot there. So yeah. Thank you very much for your support of the ABC, and thank you for inviting me.